Hello and welcome to the SEO Bootcamp. My name is Tom Ziegelbauer, and I'm going to be here with you for about the next 25 minutes to give you some of the fundamentals in terms of SEO that can help empower you as a leader to take full control of your business. So a little bit of background on myself. I have been in this game since about 1994. I started out as a web developer designer back then. And in 1998, I was sending out about 20 million emails a day. So I was one of the pioneers of what we now call spam to people. And so have been heavily involved in education training, IT management, finance, marketing, you name it, a lot of different areas along the way here. So that's a little bit about my background, and let's just get into it. So a couple of tips starting us out here, and make sure that you watch through all the way to the end because I'm going to give you a huge bonus in terms of a tool that the masters of SEO out there won't even share with you or don't even talk about. So I'm going to give you that little bit of extra edge that can help you out. So first tip that I would like to share with you is if you build it, they will not come. That is just the way that the industry works. And what do I mean by that? So you can spend thousands of dollars on your web presence and your infrastructure. The issue is that if you don't tell search engines like Google, especially, which we're going to focus on here today, if you don't tell them and you don't really court them in order to coax them into your web presence, they will never find you. So just because you have a pretty website, and one of my philosophies is if you have something that looks pretty but isn't making you money, I call that art. And I live in the Denver, Colorado area here, and right outside the foothills. And I'll take it one step further. It's like having art in an art gallery up in the mountains where nobody's going to see it. So let's get you found, because the main purpose, right, of whatever your web presence is, whether it's a funnel or it's a website or something else, or a landing page, it needs to make you money. So if you're selling a product or a service, you need to be found in order to be able to increase your sales. Second thing is your SEO strategy needs to adapt over time. We've seen so many things in the last 10 years, the last 5 years, the last 2 years, the last year that have shifted in terms of SEO strategy, that if you end up heading in a certain direction and you don't adapt in terms of Google changing, Google changes about 3 times a month in terms of their algorithm that they use to rank people and websites. So what ends up happening is if you have an old, outdated strategy, you could actually be hurting your ranking. And I've seen that a bunch in thousands of websites that I've analyzed over time. So there are just some examples of that where 5, 7 years ago, you used to do something called keyword stuffing. So the search engines would come through your site, they'd be looking at it, and then they'd see all these keywords in the page that were white text on a white background. It was kind of a hack in order to be able to fool them. If you were to do that today, it would severely hurt you because they've gotten smart to things like that. And the third tip I'd like to give you is SEO fitness. And so SEO is very much like any sort of fitness program. You have to develop a habit or you will not see long-term results. And it's like anything else. I would say put a 2-week plan, at least do something every 2 weeks towards moving your SEO strategy forward. All right. So let's talk about some terminology, because this is a very fundamental thing when it comes to building a platform in order to be able to grow your business. So the first thing I keep throwing around this term SEO, SEO, SEO. What does it stand for and what does it mean? And so SEO stands for search engine optimization. What does it mean? It's basically what are the efforts that you're doing to court the favor of these search engines. So are you putting progressive titles in? What is the content strategy that you have? There's a number of things that you can do on your website in order to improve your SEO strategy, and we'll cover those in later webinars here. But the first thing, SEO, search engine strategy. The second one, which I think is almost more important, is this thing called SERP. And what does SERP stand for? It stands for search engine ranking position. Why is it important? If you are not found on page 1 of, say, Google, the likelihood of you actually being found for certain keywords that people are searching for is going to be very unlikely. So what should be in terms of sales, you're right, you want to increase your sales over time so you grow your business. Same thing with your search engine ranking position. You want to grow that at least up onto page 1 as fast as possible. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks and strategies in order how to do that, if not here on some later webinars. But you need to be very mindful of that, because you can think that you're doing all of the things in terms of SEO, but when the rubber meets the road, that's really your metric, is that search engine ranking position. Okay, next thing is indexing. So we've been talking about the search engine coming through your site. They're going to use as a guidepost something called a Sitemap.xml. It's just a bunch of text files that sit behind the scenes on your website, and it's basically a roadmap through your website to efficiently go through, and something called spider, which means that the search engines will come in at one point and then they'll spider through your site in order to be able to look at all of your content in order to determine ranking you on their service. Next thing is something called domain authority, or DA. This is something that was kind of pioneered as a signal. That's another thing that, so in Google's algorithm, they use something called signals in order to be able to come up with this metric in order to rank you. That's SERP again. So domain authority, what is that? So domain authority is how impressive your site is for particular keywords amongst all of the others. And it's not necessarily just tied to SERP, but it's tied to things like how many, if you are doing a search and how many clicks are actually going through to your link versus somebody else's link, how many links back to your site as an authority on a particular topic. And this is one of the really key metrics that is out there for websites that we've now found. And I'll give them to you as a tool down beneath in terms of some research in order to kind of find out as a starting point where you're at in terms of domain authority, because it's one of the higher signals out there that Google is using. Next thing I want to go over with you is something that Google has already announced for 2021 and is super important to jump on today. Now, some of you are doing this and some of you may be unaware of it, but this is how Google, let's get a head start, is going to be ranking us all in the future. And it's something called PageXP, WebXP, and this has to do with another terminology, UX and UI. So let's talk about all of those individually. So PageXP stands for page experience, WebXP stands for web experience, UX is user experience, and UI is user interface. So taking that from the top down, so page experience and web experience are exactly the same thing. It's how people are interacting with your pages. And this is going to become more and more critical, and this is something that Google can already track, how people are actually interacting with your pages, how they're scrolling through it, what are the links that they're clicking on it, how long are they on your pages. The UX or user experience is how masterful are you creating an experience for them to travel through your website? Are you leading them? Are they confused along the path? And that also has to go with, hand in hand with your user interface. Are you have, this is one of the things that drives me nuts on a lot of people's websites, is they want to put so much information on landing pages. They want to put so much information on a homepage because they think, oh, hey, this is going to improve the experience, or this is going to improve the amount of keywords that I'm going to be able to shove up to Google as an example. However, there's this thing that's another thing to keep in mind is this term called above the fold. So whether you're on your phone and you're browsing a website, if the information that's displayed on your phone here, whatever is below that, if that doesn't show up for you, 75% of people won't scroll past that fold of your phone, or whether it's on desktop. And Google is now looking at something, they made this change about a year ago, 2 years ago, that they don't index you, or they don't crawl through your site on desktop first and rank you higher there for that user experience or that page experience. They do something called mobile indexing first. So they're taking a look at how does that look on your phone, and how are people interacting with your page. So again, something to keep in mind, you want to move most of your user experience above that fold so it's visible, not only for your users and your clients that are coming through your web experience, but you also want to make sure as Google is coming through and they're indexing your site, that you want to put priority to the information that you're putting above the fold there. Okay. Two other things that affect the page experience or website experience. One is page speed. This is a huge signal for pages, and going forward, I don't see that changing anytime soon. So what is page speed? You want to keep your page loading speed under 1 second if possible. Now, there's lots of things that go into that. We'll spend an entire webinar on how to improve your page speed and some of the things that do slow down your page speed, and some of the biggest ones are actually Google itself. But there's ways to kind of get around that. We'll talk about that in another thing, but and I'll give you some tools down in the bottom of this. The other one is something called bounce rate. So again, this has to do with your web experience or your page experience. Is if somebody has come into your site and they leave right away, or they don't interact with your site at all, this is called the bounce rate. So it's a percentage out of how many people total have come into your web experience, whatever that may be, and then haven't interacted or have not done anything, haven't interacted, or they've left your page and gone somewhere else. So what are some ways to combat that? Obviously, you could create a more interactive experience, drawing them through the site. You should be telling a story. Maybe you have videos that you're engaging your viewers with. There's all sorts of things that you could be doing there. But the higher your bounce rate, that's another signal to Google that, ooh, we've got a problem here. So if you have bad user experience, bad page speed, lots of bounces, guess where you're going to end up? Not on page one. So I'm going to give you a couple tools of the trade here to wrap things up. And one of them, the free ones, you've heard of Google. They have a free tool called Google Analytics. It's a little script that you place inside of your web pages. And it allows you to see all of the metrics from visitors that are coming through your site. So you can see, are they coming from the state of California? You can actually pinpoint them down to the city that they came from. You can tell how long they've been on a particular page. You can see a live view, and you can actually see the paths that people are taking through the entire experience on your website. You can see how many of them are repeat visitors. You can see things like conversions off of sales if you have everything tracked in the right way. So free service, great tool. And what goes hand in hand with that is another free tool from Google that's called Google Search Console. So once you signed up and you put this little snippet of code on your website for the Google Analytics, you can then use Google Search Console, and it'll start building up a history of how people are searching for you. So on Google itself, if somebody has a certain keyword that they've typed in, it'll show you how many times people search for that particular keyword, that you actually showed up in the results, how many people clicked on those particular keywords along the way, which is very, very important in order to be able to hone in and really put some data behind your SEO strategy in terms of being found. And we'll talk about that again in a later video. This is more of a primer in order to be able to build you a foundation. Okay, next one, free tool, and this comes with most WordPress installations. It's called Yoast. Yoast is the de facto SEO tool, so you don't have to do this yourself. There's a lot of other hosting facilities like Wix and free GoDaddy sites and things like that, where they don't have WordPress as the backend or your platform, and you end up having to do a lot of this SEO heavy lifting yourself. It's not worth it. This is a way that you can really screw up, and Yoast has spent years and years and years developing this free tool. Might as well use it. Next thing is something called Hotjar and Crazy Egg. Both of these are freemium types of tools. You have a trial period, and then you can pay for it later. I think they both have a 14-day free trial. What do they do, and why are they important? Both of them do something called heat mapping, which will basically take a map of your web pages, and you will see these red areas where people have clicked and where people have dragged through their mouse or they've scrolled through on their phone. And it's a great way in order to be able to see the user experience from a live view. In fact, they'll do a recording. I think Hotjar will do, in their free trial, will do up to 2,000 recordings for yours, or 1,000 recordings, something like that. It's a lot. And you can watch them through the process of time. So if you have a funnel that may be underperforming, this is a great way in order to see how people are interacting with that. Or if you're not converting through some of your e-commerce, this is another great tool, at least in the beginning, a free thing that you can use in order to be able to kind of diagnose or analyze some of those errors. Last ones, there's plenty of page speed tools. So Google Page Speed Insights, Gmetrix, webpage test, webpagetest.org. 3 free tools in order to put in your website, see how your website performs against others, and it will give you some analysis in terms of, here are some great things that you're doing, here's some errors that they will tell you up front, which is lowering your scores in there. Google tends to be the most difficult to score high on, and in fact, there are some things that Google Analytics code actually brings your page score down for their code embedded in there. It's kind of something wacky. They should just kind of discount that out of there because it's their own problem. Okay, so wrapping this up, thank you so much for making it here to the end. I'm going to give you one bonus tool that could be the game changer for you. It has been on several sites that I've worked on in the past. in order to be able to rank you higher along the way in front of your competition. And it's called SERP clicks, all one word, SERP And if you go there, this is how it works. You're going to give them your website, and you're going to give them some keywords and a link off of your website that you want them to find first. Secondly, you're going to tell them a secondary page on your website in order to visit. So this is how it works, and this is why it works. So one of the signals that I talked about way back in the beginning of this was, if you do a search for a certain keyword, pair or long string, and we'll go over that again as a strategy, but whatever somebody's searching on, if you want to rank, I'll use a real life example for one of the websites that I helped out here recently. They're a furniture rental company, and they wanted to rank #1 for furniture rental Denver. So we use those keywords. So they have thousands, tens of thousands of people worldwide. They have some software behind the scenes where they'll be given a daily task to go in, search for those certain keywords. Once they find that particular website, they click on that, and then you tell them what was the secondary page you wanted to link them to. So in this case, what are they selling? They're selling furniture for rent. So we wanted to get them into the e-commerce portion, so they would start selecting furniture, so they would check out and eventually rank. Here's where we went from. So within a month, they were on page 6, or rank SERP 60 plus in there. Within a month, we were up on page 1 between 10 and 9 in terms of search engine ranking. We turned that off after a month, and that has now propelled them because we started that initial traffic. This is great if you just are starting out, as maybe you just launched a website, or maybe you're like on page 4 and you're like, I've done everything possible that I can think of in order to get my rank up. This is an easy way in order to be able to send more traffic to your website that is targeted to the pages that you want found best. So I'll give you that link again. It is SERPCLIX.com. Tell them that Tom Ziegelbauer sent you. They have a testimonial of me on their website. I just think it's one of these hidden gems and hidden strategies, or a hack, that you can do today that can instantly improve your website ranking. All right, so I really appreciate you again sticking with me through to the end here. Hopefully this gave you some value, and that you have now built a foundation of some of the fundamentals in terms of SEO. Be sure to like, subscribe, or follow me along the way. I'll have more of these follow-ups here to come soon. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.